I've been turning for about 9 years, and in the course of that time, I have been to 4 different demos that were ostensibly called basic pin turning. The first one was down at SWAT. Just go ahead and pass those around. First one was at SWAT, and all the guy did was stand there and talk about his pins. I mean, he literally held them up and talked about it. He didn't show us a thing. We had 2 different demonstrations in this club over a period of time. In one occasion, he already had the pins or the blanks on the mandrel, and he stood there and turned it and then sanded it. The next guy didn't even sand it. He just took maybe 15 minutes. The most amazing one that I've seen was one at a woodworkers club by 2 people that are very good pin turners. They had made some beautiful pins. And it had been advertised for 2 months it was going to be a demonstration of pin turning. They didn't bring a leg. They held up a mandrel and they proceeded to talk about a bunch of unrelated stuff. And people were going to sleep. So basically what I wanted to do is walk through, for the purposes of people who have never done it, the pin from start to finish. I've got the guidelines there in the handout. I also want to pass out, or at least make available to you, a catalog from Penn State. Now this is not an ad for Penn State. There's like 4 or 5 references in there from different places where pins can be purchased. But I will be making references to different things that are in the book, so if I'm talking about something that you don't quite understand what it is, then I can give you a page number and show you where it's located. So if you want a Penn State catalog, by all means take one. I've got over 2 dozen here. If you've already got one and you're already receiving their mail-outs and their catalogs on a regular basis, then you might want to pass on taking it home, since that's just another catalog. Once you order from these folks, they'll send you a catalog forever.
Yes.
So,
Every 2 weeks.
They will email you forever.
Yeah, and they'll email you on a regular basis. So somebody would help me out here, kind of distribute these. Just take one if you want one. It's not that big a deal. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is deviate just slightly from you all who have turned pin in the way that I approach this, and you'll see why. What I've got here is like it talks about in your handout, to place the workpiece between centers like this, approximately 3/4 of an inch square, at least 6 inches long. This happens to be real expensive stuff. You can see it was $1.99, this pin blank. Pin blanks can be just about any kind of wood. I wouldn't recommend 2x4 wood or pine or anything like that, but just about any kind of hardwood will work. And of course what you want to do is enhance the appearance of it just by the grain. And what I'm going to do is turn this baby around before I do anything else. The usual thing to turn a pin round, or to turn a blank round, is just a plain old roughing gouge. But I also wanted to show something else. This is the item that Bruce Reed manufactures in his own shop. This is an extremely high quality and well-made tool. It's a roughing tool, and it does its job extremely well. Bill and Joe and I had the privilege of visiting Bruce's shop last Saturday, and we were totally blown away by the ability he has to make. He's also made an offer. Now, he's an egghead engineer. I mean, a real egghead engineer. You probably talk over fiber optics that his company manufactures. But he has also graciously agreed to, if somebody has a requirement for a tool modification or something like that, that he will work with you. He's got a shop full of metalworking equipment and some great deal of innovation going on inside. So he would be the guy to talk to. He still has to work for a living, so don't pop up and say, "Hey, I'm coming over." But if you want to avail yourself of his abilities and his knowledge, get with Bruce. He's one of the good guys. What we're going to do here, by the way, this is a pin kit. This is what I'm going to turn. You pass this around. Please don't open it and let the little parts fall out. But after we've turned this blank round, we're going to take the little brass barrel out and set it on here and mark just a little bit longer than what the barrel is. And we're going to mark for both of them.
It's up high enough, I'm looking right over the camera. Okay, I need you fine if I'm looking right over the camera.
What I'm going to do next is put this in a pin job chuck. The reason for turning it round is because round goes in the pin job chuck more easily than a piece of square would. And one of your main objectives and one of your important activities in turning the pin is the drilling. You want to drill that hole directly through the middle. It's hard to hold it and drill with a hand drill. It's not quite as hard, but still difficult to get it straight on a drill press. But if you drill it on the lathe, it's amazingly simple. So what we're going to do is just place this turned piece in the pin jaw chuck. And then I'm going to part off that piece, one of those pieces. I'll use a saw so it won't go flying.
No challenge.
Screws of his head.
That's interesting.
And something else you want to be sure and do is make a little divot right in the middle of this. This is for your bit. I talked real fast to these pin turners, the guests coming in here, and I figured they'd be bored at a basic pin turning demonstration, so I gave them permission to heckle. So if you hear some cat calls from the back, it's okay.
He's talking about me.
What we're going to take is a Jacob's chuck, put it in the tailstock. And we're going to drill very carefully all the way through. This is a 7mm bit. The 7 millimeters is just a whisker larger than a 1/4 inch. I would recommend going ahead and buying a 7mm bit from the company that sells them, because from Penn State or whoever your supplier is, because it's made for specifically for drilling pins. You could probably get by with kind of fudging it around, but we want to get the size right, so that's what we're going to do here. I drill usually no more than 250 RPMs. I'm going to guide this through very carefully. After drilling about 3/4 of an inch, you clear the bit. Because drill bits, especially one this small, have a very nasty habit of not coming out at the same point that you put them in. In other words, it goes around, and you'll see the opening off to the side. Anybody who's done very much drilling knows about this. So take your time. Be deliberate about the drilling process. Now, if that was acrylic, it would have broken out the end of it. And we'll put our other one in. Hard off the waste. Flatten the surface, base off the surface. And make our dimple. This part's boring. Feel free to heckle. Okay. Now, just as a sideline, if you don't have one of these dedicated pin jaw chucks, I recommend that you go home tonight and write a letter to Santa Claus. You will find I'm using it for pens, but you will find yourself using these things an amazing amount of time for an amazing array of tasks. This happens to be a one-way, but I think all the chuck manufacturers make pen jaws. But the idea of having a dedicated chuck with pen jaws on it so you don't have to change to some other jaws, there's definitely something to be said for that. So actually what I do, my letter to Santa Claus actually consists of taking a catalog, tabbing the page and circling what I want and leaving it lying around. That works pretty good, really. Now, I want to diverge just a second from from this particular pen and show you one other technique for drilling. Install your Jacobs chuck in the drive and use your 60-degree cone in the tailstock. And then with a good clamp, with little divots marked in each end, you can drill your blanks like this. Get about halfway through. Flip it over. The 60-degree cone will fit in that hole. And you can complete the drilling process. And it's nicely centered like you want it to.
It has 2 holes.
Now the next challenge is securing that little brass tube in the blank. It's got to be glued in, and it can't be glued in with wood glue. Wood glue is made to glue 2 pieces of wood together. But if you're gluing wood to brass, you've got to use something else. My preference for gluing the tubes into the blank is epoxy, 5-minute epoxy. Super glue will work, and you get quick results, but it's so nasty, and sometimes it breaks loose. You're probably aware that you can purchase 5-minute epoxy in this little double-barreled syringe. Squirt a little bit out onto a piece of scrap. Now these barrels are roughed up, but if you happen to get hold of a barrel that is nice and slick, hit it with some sandpaper to give it a little bit of adherence. By the way, this little mixing board I got from O'Reilly Auto Parts. You can, once it dries, you can just do like that and the glue comes off and you can reuse it. It's a really,
The silicone?
I don't know what it is. I would imagine that it's a silicone.
Auto body fluid.
If you're using super glue, I'd strongly recommend that you wear gloves. And personally, I don't like to get epoxy on my fingers either. So some of these vinyl gloves that you can pick up at Harbor Freight. Anyway, what we can do is just, or what we do is just insert it, mush it around a little bit. Now they make an insertion tool, I'll show it to you in just a minute, that you can use to push the tube in. Just push it in like that, wipe off the excess. And I neglected to do something, but I'll show you with the other tube. It's best if you will tear off a little scrap of paper, wad it up, and stick it in the opening. The less glue you get inside the tube is less glue that you'll have to clean out of the tube. Yeah, you can also just stick it in a potato.
How they also sell a little strip of beeswax that you can just poke it into.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Potatoes
same thing.
are fairly cheap. Anyway,
We'll go back to the,
these little sticks, if you make a trip to Starbucks about once a year and you just hook you a handful of their coffee stirrer, you know that Starbucks are a bunch of liberals and they would die before they would offer plastic straws or anything like that to use in their restaurant. So did you know that you can be arrested and put in jail for using a plastic straw in California? Really can.
if the jail isn't burned down.
Do what?
I said if the jail's not burned down.
Anyway, if you use epoxy, typically I will glue it up the night before and let it sit overnight. You should probably let this sit for 30 minutes at minimum time. So for the next 30 minutes, feel free to talk among yourselves. Actually, what I've done is I've glued up another set here.
Put the turkey in the oven on TV. Now we open the bottom of them.
Now this is a pin mandrel here. It's got a number 2 Morse taper. It takes 2 wrenches to tighten it down because this rod will slide in and out until the collet is tightened down. It's got threads on the end and a little knurled knob at the end. This knurled knob is very important. If you look at diagram A in your handout, it will show you how you assemble or how you place your blanks on the mandrel. It wants a bearing. I usually put a washer on there in addition, and then a washer, or rather a bushing between it. Then the other mandrel, or the other piece, and then the knurled knob on the end. This mandrel also has a little hole in the end so that you can take and put your cone just like that, and that's what holds it basically. So in your pen turning, you're always turning between centers. Now, the thing that keeps the pieces from rotating in relationship to the mandrel is tightening down this knurled knob. However, there is an additional item that is recommended. It's called a hollow tailstock, or hollow tail.
Called mandrel saver.
Looks like this. Penn State calls it a mandrel saver because in your exuberance of trying to tighten this down and everything, you may cramp the tailstock too tight, and actually you can bend this mandrel. So since this allows it to go in, all it does is put pressure on the pieces to keep them from moving. Something that too I failed to mention, once I got these ready and glued up, I marked them. Well, actually, before I even cut them apart, I made a mark on each one. That's to maintain the grain, maintain the integrity of the grain. If you have a really favorably grained wood that you want to maintain that integrity, this is the way you do it. So you install it like this, and then you've got to keep them in order as you take them off.
How did you square the ends of the barrels to the length of the tubes?
I'll show you. This
Okay,
bit,
same way we do.
where do I need to hold it so you can see it?
Right up by the headstock.
Right there's fine.
This is not the type of bit that you would use if you just wanted to drill a hole. It's just got a little kind of a clearing type of cutter on it here. And then this is a facing off bit. So this is a barrel trimming bit. It's made specifically for that. It's a specialized bit. And what you will want to do, you can clear out that glue and all of that paper that you've stuffed in there, or the potato, or the beeswax, or whatever it is, by running it through there. And it needs to be done carefully. That's why I recommend using a handheld drill. You can do it on a drill press. You could do it on this. But it's probably ideal to face off the workpiece so that your brass tube is right at the very end. That's the reason why we left the piece a little bit longer than the tube. Then we want to cut that away and actually face it off so that your brass tube is exactly the length of this section. See, he promised to heckle me, but actually he's keeping me straight. I appreciate that. Now, obviously it's got to be tight in order to turn it. And you shouldn't be able to move it. Now, it really makes no difference whether you turn these round at first or you leave them square just so you drill the hole. The reason for turning it round was like I showed you, that I put it into the chuck with the pin jaws, and that pretty much guaranteed that my drill bit was going to go straight through. You wouldn't want to try to drill the whole tube and then cut it apart, because I guarantee you that many times that drill bit is going to deviate before it gets all the way through that the length of that workpiece. Now, there are personal preferences in pens. How big do you want the pen to look? I want to put it right under the... This is one of the first pens I made, and I carried it for a number of years. By the way, these are called stylus pens, but they're basically the same thing as the as the slim lines. They just don't, the slim line just doesn't have this thing that you can use on your iPad or something. To me, this pen is a little bit skinny. You may like this one. This may be more desirable, say, for a lady. This one, on the other hand, is kind of fat. I wouldn't want to be called sexist, but it looks like a full-figured gal who's got waist cinched in. This was really pretty wood. This is that fig that you gave me, Randy. But in my opinion, that's a little fat. Now, if you like a fat pen, no problem. Go for it. I find these. Is that under there?
Yeah.
I find these to be about the most desirable size. It feels good in my hand. This one is a little slimmer. This one is a little larger. But what you want to do is decide what you want before you start turning, because it's real easy to not turn them enough. That's what I did in the case of this one. Or turn them too much and get it too skinny. So get you some calipers. You can get those fancy calipers that have a battery and digital readout and everything like that. You can get a simple one like this. Or if you go to Harbor Freight, this will set you back $2.
Like, don't melt them.
It's plastic. Yeah. I'll show you an operation that you don't want to do with the plastic calipers. But anyway, let's say that we decide that this is the pen. Now, if it's your very first pen, you're just going to have to wing it. And if you like it, then you can continue to make them like that. If you don't like it, you want to make it a little bit fatter, or you want to make it a little bit skinnier, then use your calipers to determine. So if we like this one, and we make a measurement, this one is 7/16 of an inch. And that, to me, is a desirable size. So we're going to lock the caliper down, and that's what how we're going to make it. How do we determine how fat it's going to be? I'm going to use a standard parting tool, and I'm going to get right in the dead middle of each one of these. Okay, this gives us two things. One is it gives us the thickness or the maximum diameter that our pen body is going to be. In other words, we're not going to cut in the middle here any deeper than what I've already determined here with my calipers and parting tool. The second thing is going to make sure that this one and this one are the same diameter, the same size. You don't want a fat pen down on the nib and a skinny one up around the clip. So in order to make them look uniform, this is a helpful thing. Now the other guide is going to be the bushing. We're actually going to turn the ends of both these pieces down to the diameter of the bushing. You can use the calipers for that. That little trick that I used where I was holding the calipers, that's the one where you don't want to do that with a plastic thing because you'll melt the plastic. And I've gotten some
Information over here.
yeah, some information. What do you use to turn your pen? Whatever you like, whatever you're comfortable with. My personal preference is a 1/2 inch bolt edge. That's where I start. And then I finish up with a square-ended carbide tube. If you want to go carbide all the way, by all means do it. If you want to use a spindle gouge, if you want to use a detail gouge, you can even start off with a roughing gouge here, although you need to be careful with a roughing gouge. You're going to take it off real quick. Bruce's little tool would be kind of overkill on trying to do delicate work. But just whatever works for you is the tool you should use. We turn pins pretty fast. If your lathe will go 3,000 RPM, turn it to 3,000 RPM. Remember, the faster it goes, the better the tool cuts. For your initial pin, for your first pin, I recommend that you turn it in the shape of an elongated barrel. Like this. Our little veterans, after they've turned one or two pins out there, they start to make, they want to get fancy and they want to make little finger holders on there, or they want to make, they want to burn lines. They love to burn those lines in it with the little wire. And that's fine. There's all kinds of really interesting things, and some of them are kind of kitschy, but there's a lot of variations, and you're limited really by your imagination. But for your initial pin, I recommend that you just make it an elongated barrel and try very hard to make the two appear to be pretty much the same. Get it about like that with your bowl gouge, and then finish up. The reason I threw in the part about determining in advance what you want the diameter of the pin to be is, as you're sitting here looking at it from this perspective, that looks like it's way thin. That one that I showed you that looked like the fat woman with the corset also looked way thin when I was looking at it on the mandrel. But you can see where I've measured the 7/16 diameter. We haven't got there yet. So that's the reason why I recommend that. It's not an absolute necessity that you do it that way. If you've got a good eye, or you're just lucky, you'll get a nice uniform pin, and it'll be the right diameter that you want it. This is just a way of doing it to kind of give yourself a little bit of an advantage and cut out mercury. Okay, when you can feel that there's virtually no difference between where the bearing leaves off and the pin begins, you've probably got it just about right. If there's a little bit of a ridge there, you may be able to finish it up with sandpaper. That's what we tell our little veterans to do. Sanding.
Hal, you didn't mention our chisels we use at the hospital.
Those are easy wood tools. Well, they're easy wood knockoffs. Talking about sanding, I've gotten a lot of flack about this creation of mine. What I've got here is all the way from 80 grit to 600 grit. Can you see it?
Yeah.
What I actually do in the majority of the pins that I turn is I go 150, 220, and 400. And call it done. Maybe 600. I defy any layperson who's not used to doing woodwork to tell the difference between a pin that's been sanded to 400 and a pin that's been sanded to 2,000 grit. I don't think they can do it. I'm talking about a wooden pin. Now, if it's acrylic or something like that, that's a whole different story. But basically what you want to do is take your 150 grit, slow it down a little bit here. That one still needs a little trim. Talking about our veterans, I had one that got so creative, he actually turned a captive ring on a pin. That was a feat. I told him he couldn't do it, especially with Easy Wood tools. They're just basically little carbide scrapers. But he managed to do it. It was an ugly pin. but by golly, he had a captive ring.
Hey, we've never made an ugly pen. We made some that are prettier than others, but we've never made it ugly.
No, this was ugly.
I didn't hear that. We've never made an ugly pin, but what?
But we made some that are prettier than others.
Yeah.
We've never made an ugly one.
Every pin's prettier than your pin.
Some prettier than others.
Okay. We centered 150. We sanded to 220.
Who's been giving you grief over your sandpaper?
Huh?
Who's been giving you grief over your sandpaper?
Who's been giving me what?
You say you get a lot of flack over your sandpaper system?
Yeah.
Who's been doing that?
Well, they sell these little sandpaper things where you can have different grits on a reel. And for some reason, my homemade invention just brought all kinds of jocularity to it. Now this center part where I hit it with the party tool, you got to be especially careful that you get all that grain because it does collapse the grain there, and you really need to work getting it out. And then turning the lathe off and giving it a longitudinal swipe like this is certainly worth doing because it gets any rings that you've created with your sanding paper out of there. And finally, 400 grit. I usually hit it with a lick of 4-0 steel wool, but you know, every demonstration that you make, you forget something, and that was what I forgot this time. So we're ready to polish. This is the stuff we use at the VA because it's simple, it's not messy, it's just like a crayon, only it's wax. So we turn these things on.
We also use it because it's food safe.
Yeah, they're safe. And we just glop it on. I mean, just really put it on thick.
We eat our
Another alternative, I'll clean that up in just a minute. Another alternative is a friction polish. This happens to be Doctor's Wood Shop for pens. You got to shake it, and it's got all kinds of micro-aggregated synthetic wax in it, in addition to
Can you eat that?
filtered walnut oil and shellac, and yeah, it probably wouldn't be bad. There it is. So this micro aggregated synthetic wax, like I say, is basically a friction polish. So you're going to apply it at speed. And you're going to crank her up. Now on this one with the wax, you can see that right now that's pretty ugly because that wax is just glopped on there. But as we heat it up with the friction of holding the paper towel against it, the heat is going to melt the wax into the wood. Some of it's going to come off on the towel for sure, but some of it is also going to be melted into the wood, and it will give a very nice finish. You've got to burn your fingers to get this to work right. And most of our little veterans are not enthusiastic about burning their fingers, so we have to do it. We get a pretty good polish. They recommend 4 or 5 coats of the wax here. I'm not going to do 4 or 5. In both cases, you want to get it hot and you want to use a lot of friction. Okay, we are ready to make a pen.
Is that sandpaper caddy a door prize?
Can be. Apparently you're of a different generation than the people that tease me about it. So.
Guess I'll throw away my cardboard box and go to one of those.
You got a box.
Okay, look at diagram B in your notes. I just took this first section off. I'm holding it like this, took the bushing off, and I'm keeping them in order. It's really important, even though as simple as it may appear, it's important with these pens that you read the directions and how to put it on the how to assemble it on the mandrel and how to assemble the final pen. If you get something other than a slimline pen, it will tell you you may need different bushings. Check when you order it what kind of bushings are required, because if you use the wrong bushing, you're not going to get good results. It's going to be too small, or it's going to flop around on the mandrel, or something is going to go wonky. So pay close attention to the instructions. So what I'm going to do is pull out the instructions, open it up to diagram B, and it shows how I should assemble my pen. Do this where you can see it. On a surface that you can see. We're going to remove all the little parts from the plastic wrappers. There's no real use to keep these plastic wrappers once you open them. I kept a whole drawer full of them for a while, and just finally decided what was good for it. All right. Here's our pin parts in the order that I took them off the mandrel, in the order that I turned them all the way. The nib, the mechanism, the ink cartridge. By the way, be sure you take this thing off. Don't try to poke it through there, because you'll find out how you have to take a pin apart in order to get it to work. Ask me how I know. Here's our ring that goes in between. Here's the clip, and here is the little topper. Now, you can put it together in a vise. A bench vise works just fine. You can turn a little round object that will fit in your headstock and in your tailstock like this. These happen to be sold by Penn State, and that's their purpose, is to be able to press these pins together. Using your lathe to press it together is probably a good idea, unless you're going to be in production and you want to make 20 pins a day or something like that, in which case you'll probably need one of those assembly presses. A pin has to be pressed together. You can't push it together with anything other than a vise or some type of an assembly mechanism. First we put the nib in, then we put in the mechanism. This is also called the transmission. Now, a lot of times these want to bend and get crooked, so you have to be careful. You can actually break the pin if you're not careful about inserting. And you want to kind of feel your way along while inserting the mechanism, because you don't want to get it in too far, but you want to get it in far enough that the writing part will be able to roll out and also be retracted. Typically, the little mark that it puts on there is the one that will make it work for you. Now that is not, can you see that?
Hold it right over the tail
Right
stock.
there.
There you go.
Right over the tailstock. There?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not far enough, so we want to remove this pin fill and give it a little bit more of a crank. Push it in a little bit further. And then keep working with it until we get it to extend and get it to completely retract. And that's what it does. Next step is the little ring that goes around the middle. And then I kept that in order, and I kept it facing in the same direction. And voila. If there's anyone here, whether you turned a pen or not, but you would like to come and be guided in making a pen, be at my shop Saturday morning, sometime after 8:30. I'll feed you breakfast. I'll give you all the coffee and orange juice you want to drink.
Wait, what?
I've been cooking since I was 13 years old. I've only been turning since I was, for the last 9 years, so I'm arguably a better cook than I am wood turner. So, if you want breakfast, promise to be good. You guys that have been there know it. And you will go away with a pen that you have turned and made yourself. The only cost to you is whatever I had to pay for the kit. They range from $3 to $6. I've got 3 different varieties. So this is extended as an invitation. You're welcome to come over, make yourself a pen, drink coffee, eat breakfast, and enjoy fellowship. So, any questions? Anybody have anything? I made reference to things in the Penn State catalog. If you want to look at that catalog, I've tabbed a number of things. The slimline pens are on page 29. There's one called a Comfort Pen, which is next page over, page 31. The stylus pens are on page 85, and then there's information about, I did want to show you this, one more thing. A pen that you've turned makes a very nice Christmas gift. You've got 6 weeks till Christmas. In-state's pretty good about shipping. They used to be horrible. It used to take sometimes as much as 30 days to get your order. The last 3 or 4 times I've ordered from them, they've gotten there in 5 days or less. When you order a pen kit, or if you decide to order a pen kit, order you a pocket full of these too. They come in packs of 10. They're 85 cents a piece, so you'd be talking $8.50. But there's, where's that pen?
What pen?
Oh, well. I'll use mine. If you wanted to give somebody a gift of a pen, you could say, here. But if you want to impress them with your class and your level of caring, you put it in a little felt box and give it to them like that. Stocking stuffers, a gift for your dentist. Did anybody ever give you a pen?
Never. They gave me a little lip, but
The person that cuts your hair, the waitress that pours your coffee at your favorite restaurant. They make really nice gifts because they're personalized and they're handmade.
I'll tell you something else for gifts. I've done this numerous occasions. You take Granddad's shovel that's in the basement or the garage that nobody cares anything about, and you take the handle and make all the family members pens out of Granddad's shovel, and it's something they'll treasure.
I'm going to catch this guy and force him to come and give a demonstration.
Yes.
He's imparted more wisdom to us than I know. Granddad's shovel handle.
It's cool. Axe handle, hammer handle, anything. No handle.
Most of you know Les Steen. A couple of years ago, he handed me 2 pieces of wood. He said, here, this is from the old White House. His mother had gotten a piece from her congressman back in 1951 when they remodeled it, moved Harry Truman over to Blair House or whatever it is. And he wanted a gavel out of it. Well, you talk about puckered. I mean, here's a piece of 100-year-old pine that he wants turned into something nice, irreplaceable stuff. But I managed to do it all right. I practiced a whole lot before I touched it. But that's kind of along the same line, same idea. if you have something that is a treasure, a family heirloom of some sort, and you can turn like a handle into a pen and give it a story, that makes it all the more nice.
I made one for a friend of mine retired from the railroad, out of a piece of railroad tie.
Yeah.
He treasured it.
Yeah. That's one thing about pens. It doesn't take a lot of equipment, and it doesn't take a lot of materials. So, anything? Any questions? I'll expect to see some of you Saturday morning. Okay?
Hey, real quick,